Hi, welcome back to my channel, and welcome to this somewhat gloomily lit book haul. It's not even 4 o'clock, but you know, it's the UK, winter is coming, and it's grey and dark outside, and yeah, you know, this is what I have to work with. So I did my pile of possibilities a little while ago, where I went through basically all of my unread Victorian books that I have on my shelves, and I realised that although there are a fair few, I don't really have that much in terms of Victorian books, which I thought was quite odd considering I did a PhD in Victorian literature. And I was like, there are so many books that I don't own and that I would like to read. So I took a trip to my trusty charity shop and I basically just went looking for Victorian novels, seeing if they had some of the titles that I might be interested in. I came home with a somewhat significant pile of books. Many of them were indeed Victorian, so that is what is going to be, you know, the main theme of this video. I only paid less than £13 for all of them together, so, you know, it's just, I just couldn't resist. I couldn't resist. So yeah, let's talk about all the books that I bought, and I also bought one book that I actually got new, but we'll get to that. The first book that I got is Lady Audley's Secret by Mary Elizabeth Braddon. I haven't read anything by Mary Elizabeth Braddon yet. I have heard really, really good things about her, and that a lot of her books sort of fall into the sensationalist fiction corner of Victorian literature. And this book sounded really good. The back says, Lady Audley's Secret subtly undermined the Victorian myth that female self-assertion was a form of insanity. I mean, that sounds really good. I always love having sort of proto-feminist themes in Victorian fiction. So this one sounds really great. I'm not entirely sure I'm going to be able to read this or any of the other books that I have bought this month necessarily, but I am really looking forward to just also reading Victorian fiction just throughout the year. I don't have to necessarily be like pinned to the Victober event, even though I think the event is really, really fun. Then an author that I do see a lot of people talking about and that I'm really keen to try, and that is Elizabeth Gaskell, and I bought North and South, and I also bought Cranford. So I got these two novels from Gaskell. I also own Mary Barton, so I now own 3 of her novels, which means that I better get on actually reading them. I'm quite keen to try Gaskell because some of the themes that I know are in her books are things that quite appeal to me. I think the one I'm drawn to the most is probably North and South. I personally live in the north of England, and I find the north and south divide quite interesting, and some of the cultural differences that, you know, are part of that north-south dichotomy actually have quite a long history. So I'm quite interested in reading about that, reading about industrialization in the north of England, stuff like that, that I know are part of this novel. I've also heard that the romance is really good. I'm not a huge romance reader, but you know, I do enjoy a good romance now and again. So I'm hoping that Gaskell is an author that I actually really like, because otherwise I bought a ton of her books for nothing. Next up is another author that I would really like to try, and that is Anthony Trollope. Now, I know that there is a group read going on at the moment of one of Trollope's books. I think it's The Way We Live Now. The one that I bought is Can You Forgive Her? You know, it's a secondhand bookshop. You don't really have a lot of choice necessarily. This was one of the ones that they had that I know is a standalone, because Trollope also has a couple of series, and I'm now realising that I actually have tried Trollope before. I read The Warden. I think I might have removed that from my memory because I did not enjoy that. It was way too much church politics. So I feel like I want to just give Trollope perhaps a new try. Because I don't really feel like The Warden really gave me what I have heard Trollope provides. So this one sounds a lot more appealing. It sounds like there might be less church politics in this one. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to trying Can You Forgive Her? And then finally, another Victorian book that I bought is by George Gissing, and this is New Grub Street. I know a little bit about this book. I know it deals with the publishing industry in the Victorian era, which I find really fascinating. I like publishing anyway. I'm quite interested just in the business side of publishing, but to have like an insight in the life of a writer and the life of, you know, what it's like to publish, the market demands, revolving publishing. That all sounds really interesting. So I'm quite keen to give this one a shot. I have heard though that Gissing has a tendency to write things that are sort of emotionally devastating. I don't know whether I'm going to find it too dark or too tragic. For me, tragic stories can be a bit of a hit and miss. Like sometimes it really works for me and sometimes I just find it perhaps a little bit too much. So I'm quite interested to see where Gissing falls on that spectrum for me. Then a book which sort of straddles Victorian time and other time periods afterwards, and that is the Works of Kipling. And these are mainly his poetry. I've never read any Kipling, although I know of him. I know about, you know, that he wrote The Jungle Book and some other quite famous stories. But then I saw this book for £1.50 and I was like, you know what, I'm quite happy to just give Kipling a try, see what I think. I don't think I'm going to be reading this cover to cover. I think that might be a little bit much. This is the kind of book that I will just dabble in. I will just pick out bits and pieces. So maybe this month I'll have a look and see if there is something that he wrote actually within the Victorian period that I might want to read during the wonderful month of October and the wonderful event of Victober. Then I also bought 4 really beautiful editions of modern classics. So the first one I got is I, Claudius by Robert Graves in this very pretty edition that I got for £2. And I, Claudius is a fictional memoir of the Emperor Claudius. And I've heard some really, really interesting things and some really good stuff about this book, so I'm really keen to give this one a shot. In this same edition, I also got The Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man by James Joyce. I'm hoping that this is a James Joyce that is actually somewhat accessible. I think this one has some autobiographical elements. And either way, even if it isn't super accessible, at least it will be better than Ulysses, which is very long, very complicated, and is just a huge challenge. So I'm hoping that maybe this is an easier way getting into James Joyce. In the same edition, I also got Decline and Fall by Evelyn Waugh? I have no idea. Like, this is one of the reasons why English is such a difficult language, because sometimes you just see a name or a place name, especially in England, and you just have no idea. This is one of those times. I don't really know much about this book. I know that it's a modern classic, but I don't really know any specifics about the plot. Also, this has no description or anything like that. But it came in this pretty edition, and I was like, well, if I'm going to have a set, I might as well include this one. And then last in this set, I also got Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. I love Virginia Woolf. I love her writing. I think she's awesome. I haven't read Mrs. Dalloway yet, but I'm really happy that I now actually have a copy of it, that I also have a pretty copy of it. And I'm really excited to dive into this one. Then I also have Invitation to the Waltz by Rosamund Lehmann, which is also a modern classic. It was published in 1932. And the back of this book says, "This richly evokes the texture of rural middle-class England," which sounds quite fun. This is quite a short book. You don't really see it from the outside, but the text is absolutely giant, like the margins are huge. So this seems to be quite a quick read, and the back made it sound quite interesting, so I'm looking forward to giving this one a shot. This isn't an author that I've heard much about, but I think it's always really fun to discover new authors, so I'm hoping that this will be an author that I really enjoy. And then I also got a new copy of The Canterbury Tales by Chaucer. I do already own a copy of The Canterbury Tales, but it was a really old translation, and I think it was a prose translation. So it took verse and then turned it into prose, and I just don't really think that's the best way to read old poetry. So I splurged and got myself a new translation. I think this one is by David Wright, and this is actually a poetry translation. So you can see that it's in verse, which I think is closer to the original and therefore perhaps shows a little bit more of the original qualities of the work. I have read most of the Canterbury Tales, but I don't really remember much about it, and I'm hoping that this translation will give me a better way into it. And then finally, the only actual new book that I bought, and this is Mr. Magic by Kiersten White. I love Kiersten White. She's probably one of my favourite modern authors. I feel like I just sort of stumbled into her work, but I really enjoy her writing style. I think she's really great. Most of what she has written is young adult, but she also published a horror book. I'm not sure if it was last year or a year before. It was called Hide, and this is also an adult horror book. It's about this kids show, and the kids that were on this show are having a reunion, and there's some really spooky stuff going around about this show. You know, it's all records of it have disappeared and something's going on, and I'm assuming it's going to be spooky. I'm assuming it's going to be creepy. I think Kiersten White is a really good writer, so I'm just really looking forward to this book. I read her last book in a day, so I'm just hoping to curl up with this, especially when it's like gloomy like today. Perhaps tonight is the right moment to give this one a shot and have a nice spooky time. So those are all the books that I bought recently in the last couple of weeks. Let me know if there's any of the books that you think I should really prioritize. Let me know if there's something that you think was absolutely terrible and you just really need to vent a little bit about it. You know, I am all ears. A small reminder that if you would like to support my channel, I now do have a Patreon where you can get early access to my videos, and you get to vote on the books that I read. The link for that will be below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little book haul. I hope to see you again soon. Bye!